My name is Alyssa Hart. I'm 33 years old, and the night I finally understood who my family really was happened in a ballroom filled with people who thought they knew us. It was my sister's engagement party in Charlotte, North Carolina. 100 guests, a champagne tower, a string quartet playing Taylor Swift instrumentals, and my mother in a sequined dress she kept bragging was custom. Everyone stood waiting for my sister, Mariah, to walk down the floral-decorated staircase with her fiancé. But instead, my mother stepped up to the microphone. She glanced at me, just once, before smiling at the crowd with the same expression she used when she corrected me as a child. "I want to thank everyone for celebrating my daughter," she said. "My only daughter." People laughed, thought it was a joke, until Mariah added, loud enough for the chandeliers to rattle, "Let's be real. Alyssa hasn't been part of this family in years." Every face in the ballroom turned toward me. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just gripped the small envelope in my purse, a document I had kept for months, waiting for this exact moment. They thought they were humiliating me. They had no idea I came prepared to bury the version of me they used and tossed aside. I grew up in Union City, Tennessee, a place where everyone knows everyone, and everyone especially knows who's struggling. My parents always joked that our family motto should have been, "Don't ask questions, just survive." My dad worked HVAC, often coming home with fiberglass on his shirt and exhaustion in his bones. My mom worked part-time at a dentist's office, though she treated it like she ran the American economy herself. We weren't poor, but we were never stable. Mariah and I were 2 years apart. She was the golden one. Shiny hair, shiny grades, shiny personality. People loved her instantly. Meanwhile, I was serviceable. Good at school, good at chores, good at helping. Just not the kind of good that earned praise. When I was 14, things got worse. Dad got hurt on a job site, fell off a ladder and shattered his hip. Suddenly, our house ran on my mom's guilt and my overtime. While Mariah joined cheerleading, I got a job bagging groceries at Kroger to help pay bills. The family dynamic shifted permanently after that. Mariah was the future. I was the help. They didn't say it out loud, but they didn't have to. When your mom calls you responsible in the same tone someone uses to describe a reliable dishwasher, you understand. By 19, I was working 2 jobs and going to community college at night. My parents didn't attend my graduation. They were busy helping Mariah pack for her move to Nashville, where she planned to become a lifestyle influencer. She had 800 followers at the time. Meanwhile, I got a scholarship to finish a bachelor's degree in Raleigh. I moved away, got a corporate job in project operations, and slowly, painfully slowly, started building my own life. For the first time, I wasn't the family workhorse. For the first time, I could breathe. But families like mine, they don't forget the child who sacrificed everything for them. They just remember they can call when they need something. And oh, they called. When Mariah's car got repossessed, I co-signed for the next one. When Mom maxed out a credit card, I helped negotiate a payment plan. When Dad slipped again and needed help paying medical bills, I sent money every month. All while hearing, "We're so proud of you, Liz. You turned out so well. You've always been the dependable one. We'd be lost without you." The thing about being the strong one is that no one checks if you're actually okay. They just keep piling weight until you break. And I did break. It happened on a random Tuesday. My manager pulled me aside after a meeting and said, "You're doing the work of 3 people. You know that, right?" It wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. It was the moment I realized my entire life was built around being useful, not valued. I was still their exhausted, dependable dishwasher, just upgraded to a stainless steel model. I pulled back, slowly at first. Fewer calls, fewer transfers, fewer, "of course I'll help," responses. And my family noticed. Not in a "we miss you" way, in a "how dare you stop serving us" way. Which leads to the engagement party, the night they decided to publicly cut me out. They thought they were the ones delivering the blow, but the truth was, that night, I was the one setting the stage. Because by then, I had something they didn't know about, something that changed everything. The shift began 6 months before the party. I got a call from a lawyer in Nashville who introduced himself as Attorney Colson, representing my late grandmother, my dad's mother, who I barely knew. She'd lived in Nebraska most of her life and passed away earlier that year. According to him, she had left behind the deed to 37 acres of farmland, a rental house, a modest investment portfolio, and a handwritten letter addressed specifically to me, not to my parents, not to Mariah, to me. It didn't make sense. I wasn't the favorite granddaughter. I wasn't even the present granddaughter. But when I flew out to see the property, everything clicked. In her letter, Grandma wrote, "I saw what your parents put on your shoulders. I couldn't fix it while I was alive, but I can give you a way out now. Don't let them drain you dry. Build a life that is yours." The farmland? It sat on newly surveyed land for a solar energy expansion. Developers were offering 7 figures for it. I didn't tell my family. For the first time in my life, I had something that wasn't theirs to use. But around that same time, Mom started calling more insistently. "Alyssa, we need help covering Mariah's engagement photos. Alyssa, your sister needs new furniture for her apartment. Alyssa, the venue deposit is due. Can you cover it for now?" For now. Always for now. When I said I couldn't, Mom snapped. "You've changed. Money made you selfish." She had no idea how much money I was actually sitting on. And the irony of being called selfish by the woman who never asked if I slept or ate was breathtaking. The final straw came 1 month before the engagement party. My dad accidentally sent me a screenshot meant for my mom. In it, she wrote, "Alyssa is pulling away. Maybe it's time we stop pretending she's family. Mariah is the one who deserves our support anyway." My chest went hollow. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because in that moment, clarity finally settled. I wasn't their daughter. I was their resource. And they resented me for daring to want a life of my own. I forwarded the screenshot to myself, printed it, and placed it in the black envelope I would later bring to the engagement party. Then, 2 weeks later, Mom called and said, "We expect you at the engagement. Wear something nice." Expect. That was the word. Not invite. Expect. I marked the date on my calendar, and next to it wrote, "Final chapter." The ballroom was suffocating. The chandeliers, the gold accents, the floral arches, everything screamed money. Money I knew they expected me to help pay for. Money they had accused me of withholding. Mom took the mic first, then Mariah piled on. People looked at me like I was a stray dog that wandered in from the street. Someone whispered, "Is that the sister who caused all the drama?" I felt myself detach. Not numb, focused. This was the moment. The moment the old version of me, obedient, overworked, overlooked, finally died. I walked forward, slow and controlled, the click of my heels echoing across the marble floor. The room was silent. I placed the black envelope on the table in front of my mother. "Open it," I said. She smirked. Mariah crossed her arms. Dad avoided eye contact. Then my mother tore the seal. Mom's eyes slid across the first page, and the confident smile she'd been wearing all night, the polished, performative Southern hostess smile, fell off her face like wet makeup. "What is this?" she whispered. The guests leaned in. Mariah stepped closer, peering over Mom's shoulder. "It's a deed," I said, my voice steady and firm, "to 37 acres in Nebraska, left to me by Grandma Hart." Mom blinked fast, trying to recover her composure. "She hardly knew you." I tilted my head. "She knew enough." Dad reached for the page, but I placed another document on top. A signed development offer. 7 figures, non-negotiable, pending only my signature. A gasp rippled through the room. Mariah's fiancé muttered, "Damn," under his breath. Mariah's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you tell us you had this?" "Because the last time you thought I had money," I said, "you sent me an itemized list of everything you believed I owed this family." People murmured. Mom shook her head violently. "You're twisting things. We've always supported you." I reached into the envelope and pulled out the next page. The screenshot Dad accidentally sent me, printed in black and white, highlighted. I read it aloud. "Alyssa is pulling away. Maybe it's time we stop pretending she's family." The entire ballroom froze. You could have heard a single champagne bubble pop. Dad looked like he wanted to sink through the marble floor. Mariah looked furious, not embarrassed, furious, because her reflection in this moment didn't match the image she curated online. Mom stuttered. That was taken out of context." "There is no context," I said softly, "where a mother plans to disown her daughter because she stopped being useful." Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Mariah's voice sharpened. "So what? You're rich now and think you're better than us?" I actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. "No, I think I'm finally free from you." Her face twisted. She wasn't used to losing. Not attention, not affection, and definitely not control. "Why are you doing this tonight?" she snapped. "Because you chose tonight," I replied. "You chose to humiliate me in front of your friends. You chose to pretend I don't exist. I'm simply giving you the truth you asked for." The truth. That word lingered in the air like smoke. Every family has an image, and that night, mine had carefully curated theirs around the idea that I was distant, ungrateful, cold. But now, publicly, undeniably, it was clear who truly broke the family apart. And it wasn't me. 6 months earlier, I was sitting in Attorney Colson's office, the Nebraska winter sun bleeding weak light through the blinds. He handed me a folder filled with property evaluations, land surveys, and financial statements. The solar development company wanted to build battery storage facilities across the farmland. "This is life-changing money," he'd said gently. "You need to think carefully about how and who you share it with." I didn't need to think. I knew exactly who I couldn't share it with. My family treated money like an IV drip connected directly to my veins. The more they wanted, the more drained I became. But I didn't want revenge. Not then. I wanted distance, space, a future where my value wasn't determined by how quickly I responded to a financial crisis. Still, somewhere deep down, I knew the day would come when I'd need to stand up for myself in a way they couldn't twist or rewrite. And that required preparation. Step 1. Protect the inheritance. I created a trust with my name as the sole beneficiary, untouchable by outside claims. My lawyer assured me, even if your family tries to challenge it, they have no grounds. I felt something unfamiliar flutter in my chest. Security. Step 2. Record everything. Every guilt trip voicemail, every text asking for money, every accusation when I said no, every sarcastic remark about how Mariah was the real success story. Not to use against them, but to remind myself that I wasn't imagining the pattern. Step 3. Stop funding their lifestyle. This was the hardest step. Mom yelled. Mariah cried. Dad stayed silent. The kind of silence that's worse than shouting. "You're abandoning us," Mom said. "No," I answered. "I'm stopping the part where you abandon me." Step 4. Build my own life. I accepted a promotion at work. I moved into a downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I started therapy. I took solo trips. I made friends. For once, my life wasn't measured by what I did for others. It was measured by who I was becoming. Step 5. Wait. People like my family always reveal themselves. Always. The moment they believed I couldn't serve them anymore, their affection dried up like spilled water under the sun. So when the engagement invitation came, with its gold foil and its unspoken obligation, I knew, this is where it ends. But ending it quietly wasn't enough anymore. Not after the screenshot. Not after being publicly demeaned my entire life. This time, I wasn't walking into their event as the silent, dependable daughter. I was walking in as the woman they never thought I'd be. Quietly powerful, fully independent, and absolutely done. Back in the ballroom, Mom held the last page of the envelope with trembling fingers. The room waited. On it was the clause they feared most. My lawyer's formal notice that any attempt to claim my inheritance or defame me publicly would trigger legal action. Mariah scoffed. "You wouldn't dare sue your own family." "Funny," I said. "That's what Grandma wrote about you all." The lawyer had shown me a note she wrote years ago. "Mariah has a sweet smile, but an entitled heart. Alyssa has a quiet strength. One will take, one will heal. Give to the healer." Mom's face cracked, not because of the money, because she couldn't rewrite the narrative anymore. Couldn't pretend I was the problem. Couldn't frame herself as the victim. For the first time in my life, I watched her lose control. "You blindsided us," she whispered. "No," I said. "You erased me. I'm just correcting the record." Mariah crossed her arms. "So what now? You walk out and leave us with nothing?" I shrugged gently. "You made it clear I left years ago." The final blow wasn't the money, wasn't the documents, wasn't even the truth. It was this. I had nothing left to fear, and nothing left they could take. Mom collapsed into her chair. Dad stared at the floor. Mariah's fiancé whispered, "Maybe we should postpone the wedding." And the guests, people who worshipped the perfect family image, looked horrified to discover they'd been watching a performance that had just fallen apart. I gave them one last look, then turned around and walked away. Not rushed, not flustered, just done. When I stepped out of the ballroom and into the cool Carolina night, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of my childhood home. Not the guilt-soaked silence after one of Mom's tirades. Not the brittle silence of people waiting for me to fix everything again. No, this silence felt like space, like possibility, like oxygen finally reaching the parts of me that had been starved for decades. The valet jogged to the curb with my car keys, still wide-eyed from what he'd witnessed. He didn't say a word, just handed me the keys like he was passing a torch. I slid into my car, closed the door, and let my forehead rest against the steering wheel as my breath finally steadied. For the first time in a very, very long time, I felt something unfamiliar pulse through my chest, a sense of rightness. I didn't win anything. I didn't defeat anyone. I simply put down a weight that never belonged on my shoulders. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed with messages. Dad, call me. Mariah, you embarrassed everyone. Mom, we need to fix this before people start talking. I turned the phone off. It was the easiest decision I'd made all year. The weeks after the party were surreal. I kept waiting for the guilt to come, waiting for the doubt, waiting for that familiar pull. You should go back. You should apologize. You should smooth things over like always. But instead, something strange happened. I slept deeply, restfully, without waking up at 3 a.m. worrying about bills that weren't mine or fires I needed to put out. Food tasted better. Music sounded richer. The air felt less heavy. And for the first time in my adult life, my schedule didn't revolve around accommodating a family crisis. I started my mornings with a walk along the river instead of a phone call from Mom. I spent evenings taking pottery classes instead of negotiating payment plans. On Sundays, I cooked for myself, not for a household that never thanked me. I didn't realize how much of my life had been shaped around serving others until I stopped. The emptiness they left behind wasn't sadness. It was room. Room for joy. Room for peace. Room for myself. My career blossomed too. 3 months after that night, I was promoted to senior operations lead, something I'd been passed over for twice before because my boss worried I was spread too thin. I wasn't anymore. I showed up to work clear-headed, energetic, and fully present. Colleagues who once overlooked me began asking for my input. Executives mentioned my name in meetings. I was finally seen, not for what I could endure, but for what I could create. And then there was my inheritance. I signed the development contract. The money was transferred into my trust. I didn't buy a luxury house. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't run to Instagram to flaunt a new life. Instead, I paid off my student loans, donated to a domestic violence shelter in Tennessee, funded a scholarship for first-generation college students from rural towns, opened a high-yield savings account for investments that grew quietly in the background. The greatest luxury I purchased was peace of mind. And even though the number in my trust was life-changing, the real transformation was internal. For the first time in my adulthood, I felt like the main character of my own life. And my family? They spiraled exactly how I expected. Mariah's fiancé postponed the wedding to reassess finances and priorities. Mom called repeatedly until, eventually, the calls turned into long, rambling voicemails about, "You don't understand what you put us through. You need to take responsibility for the embarrassment. We raised you better than this. You owe us a conversation." It took her 3 months to finally say the one sentence I had been waiting decades to hear. "Alyssa, please, we need you." Not, "We miss you." Not, "We love you." Not, "We're sorry." Just another version of the same plea. Come fix what we broke. I didn't call back. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but because I now understood something critical. I was never meant to heal wounds I didn't cause. Then one day, an unexpected message arrived. From Dad. Just one line. "I'm proud of you." No explanation, no follow-up, no guilt attached. Just 5 words that unraveled something tight inside my chest. I didn't reply immediately. I let it sit. Let myself feel it. Let myself acknowledge that sometimes the right thing to do is not to cut people out of your life entirely, but to set a boundary so firm that only genuine love can cross it. I eventually responded, "Thank you. I hope you're doing well." Short, simple, clean. I didn't invite him back in, but I didn't close the door completely either. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just choosing not to reopen the wound. The greatest change of all happened slowly, then all at once. One Friday evening, after a long work week, I sat on the floor of my apartment, shaping clay on my new pottery wheel. Soft music played in the background. The lights were warm. A candle flickered gently on the table. And I realized, this is the life I thought I'd never have. A life where I wasn't drowning. A life where my worth wasn't tied to sacrifice. A life where I chose myself without apology or permission. A life that didn't require me to be anyone's savior, just my own. If you're a woman between 25 and 45, and you're reading this feeling a tug in your chest, then you already know this story isn't just mine. It's yours too. Because so many of us grew up believing, if we're helpful, we'll be loved. If we're accommodating, we'll be appreciated. If we sacrifice enough, someone will finally show up for us the way we show up for them. But the truth is harsher. Some families don't want daughters. They want labor. They want emotional support. They want financial backup. They want someone to blame when they're unhappy. And when you stop fulfilling that role, they don't grieve losing you. They grieve losing the version of you that kept their world running smoothly. But here's the thing. You are not required to bleed to keep other people warm. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to give someone else light. You are not born to be a supporting character in someone else's story. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to rebuild a life that isn't shaped by the weight of other people's expectations. And you are allowed to do it without guilt. Because when you strip everything away, every obligation, every demand, every manipulation, every "you owe us," every "why can't you just," every "we need you to," what's left is the most powerful truth a woman can discover. Your worth is not negotiable. Your peace is not optional. Your life is yours, not theirs, never theirs. And when you finally step into that truth, you don't lose your family. you lose your fear. 3 months after the engagement party imploded, I received a wedding invite. Not from Mariah, from one of her former bridesmaids, Clara, who wrote, "I'm sorry about everything that happened. I wanted you to know Mariah and Daniel officially broke up. He said he needed someone more grounded. Just thought you should hear it from someone kind." I stared at the message for a long time, not because I felt triumphant, not because I wanted her to suffer, but because, for the first time, someone in her circle saw me as something other than an accessory failure in the Hart family narrative. Grounded. It was such a simple word, but it was the first label tied to me that wasn't rooted in servitude. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I folded the small note and placed it in my journal, under the page where I'd written, "I am not who they made me. I am who I choose to become." A week later, Mom called. This time I answered. Her voice was thin, fragile, like stretched fabric starting to tear. "Alyssa," she began, "your sister is struggling. She won't talk to me. She won't come out of her room. I thought maybe you could—" "No, Mom," I said, softly, calmly, truthfully. The silence on the phone crackled like broken glass. "She needs her sister," she insisted. "No," I corrected. "She needs a therapist and accountability. She doesn't need another human emotional support system to dump her problems onto." Mom inhaled sharply. "You sound so cold." "I sound healthy," I replied. Another silence. Then, quietly, "I miss the old you." "I don't," I said, and hung up. And for the rest of the day, I kept repeating those words in my head. I don't miss the old me. I don't miss the old me. I don't miss the old me. I missed who I could have been if someone had protected me instead of using me. But I didn't miss the exhausted daughter, the overworked sibling, the financial safety net, the emotional punching bag. That version of me died the night I placed the envelope on the table. Mom didn't call back for 7 weeks. When she finally did, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about Mariah. It wasn't about image. It was about Dad. "He's been asking about you," she said. "A lot." I felt my throat tighten. Dad was never the villain. He was passive to a fault, yes, but he was never the author of my pain. He was a man who'd been worn down by life, by injury, by bills he couldn't pay, by a marriage that swallowed him whole. "Can I talk to him?" I asked. A pause, then Dad's warm, tired voice. "Hey, bug." My breath caught. He hadn't called me that in years. For a moment, I was 9 years old again, riding in his truck eating gas station pretzels, believing the world was safe as long as Dad was at the wheel. We talked for 26 minutes. About nothing. About everything. About weather, fishing, his hip, my job, new restaurants in Raleigh, the Titans' chances this NFL season, normal things, human things. And when the call ended, I didn't feel dragged back. I didn't feel manipulated. I didn't feel guilty. I felt okay. Healing, I realized, isn't a doorway you walk through once. It's a long hallway filled with choices, and Dad was one of the few I was willing to choose again. Not because I owed him, but because he was showing up in a way that was unburdened by expectation. As for Mariah, she eventually texted, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. 2 weeks later, "I'm trying to fix things." I didn't respond to that either. Then, "Do you even care what happens to me?" That one hurt more than I expected, not because I felt responsible, but because it reminded me how deeply she depended on using guilt as a lifeline. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that one too. Finally, I wrote, "I hope you find real help. I hope you grow. But I'm not your punching bag. Not anymore." I hit send. No explanation, no justification, no essay defending my boundaries. A boundary is not a debate. It's a decision. Mariah never responded, and that was okay. Some relationships don't heal. Some relationships shouldn't heal. Some relationships are chains disguised as love. Mine with her was one. The true karmic twist came quietly. One afternoon, I received a letter from the county clerk's office in Tennessee. Inside was a copy of a legal complaint Mariah had attempted to file, a petition seeking partial access to my inheritance. The judge dismissed it immediately. The reason? She had no legal standing, no evidence, no rights to the estate, and a documented history of attempting to leverage familial emotional pressure. It was surreal. Not because she tried to take what wasn't hers, I expected that, but because the legal system, for once, protected me instead of punishing me for being too accommodating. The younger me, the one who let people walk over her to keep the peace, would have cried and wondered what she did wrong. The woman I am now poured a cup of tea, sat on her balcony, and watched the sunset. I didn't celebrate losing her. I celebrated finding myself. 6 months after the ballroom, I stood on the edge of the Nebraska property as construction began. Hundreds of acres of solar panels shimmering in the sun. Clean energy, jobs, future, hope. The project manager shook my hand and said, "Your grandmother would be proud, not just of what you inherited, but what you turned it into." I swallowed the sudden warmth in my throat. For years, I believed family was something you endured, something you protected at the expense of your own sanity, something you held on to even when it cut your hands. But standing there, I realized something life-altering. Family is not who you are born to. Family is who builds you, protects you, and believes in who you can become. Sometimes that's blood. Sometimes it's strangers. Sometimes, when you've been torn down long enough, your first real family is yourself. My peace didn't come from money. It didn't come from revenge. It didn't come from watching their lives unravel. It came from remembering a truth I had forgotten under years of guilt. I matter. My needs matter. My life matters. And if anyone, family or otherwise, demands that you shrink yourself so they can feel bigger, walk away. Walk out of the ballroom. Walk out of the guilt. Walk out of the cage they built for you. Walk out of the role you never agreed to play. And don't look back. Not because they don't deserve another chance, but because you deserve a chance to live. A real one, a free one, a peaceful one. And once you taste that peace, you will never, ever let anyone take it from you again. You don't get to choose the family you're born into, but you absolutely have the right to choose the family you become. And somewhere out there, in your job or your friendships or your quiet evenings alone, discovering who you really are, you will realize the most powerful sentence a woman can ever say. I am done apologizing for existing. And that is the moment your real life finally begins.